All right, guys, welcome back to the Hoops Nerd channel. Today I am excited about our guest. We have Michael Scotto from HoopsHype, and we always love having Michael Scotto on SLC Dunk. Whenever he posts an article, it's like a must post for you, SLC Dunk, to report about. Thanks for being with me, Michael.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, I wanted to have you on today just to talk about that recent article you dropped, talking about the Utah Jazz, talking about some of the different offseason tidbits you had in there. The one that kind of sent waves through Jazz Twitter and on our website was the news about Miles Bridges. I wanted to ask you about that. You mentioned that the Utah Jazz, the Detroit Pistons, and the Charlotte Hornets are three teams that have shown interest in Miles Bridges. Did you want to let us know a little bit about that and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, those are teams that have been, had interest in him for a while. I think now, obviously for Charlotte, retaining him would be something they'd like to do, looking ahead towards the future. As far as a specific price point, it's way too early to, get into that ballpark, but they all have interest. I'll start with outside of Charlotte, Detroit. Look, it's a little tricky, obviously, because they're still potentially looking for a president of basketball operations. But the bottom line is whoever goes in there, the Pistons want to get better. Miles is a native over there. And so for them, he would be a guy that can provide some improvement at both the 3 and the 4 positions. They've got to try to, I don't know if I want to say like win now, because that sounds like they're going for a championship, but they definitely want to vastly improve that team, and they've got the money to spend. I think they're going to make a move for one free agent and then potentially look at the trade market and use some of their remaining cap space. I don't think this is a situation. In fact, I've reported it's not expected to be a situation like the Houston Rockets, where they just spent all their money in free agency. As far as Utah goes, Utah with Danny Ainge, I expect them to be active, not only just in free agency, but trade talks as well. So there's a number of things that they can do. But the biggest thing with Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz is that they've got a boatload of draft picks, and they don't want to use all these draft picks. Like, they have enough young guys right now on their team. They want to start to try to get better, and especially in that West, it's pretty tough right now. So they've got a lot of work to do, and I certainly expect Danny to be active on the trade market. So a guy like Miles Bridges, we'll start with. He's a guy that, again, could be a versatile forward for them. I'm not sure ultimately if they land him, but he's been a guy that they've had interest in. And you've seen with a guy like Danny in the past, he's always coveted a guy like John Collins, and then eventually it came around and it happened. But for Utah, I think what's going to be interesting is if they're going to end up using that cap space to do a renegotiation and an extension with Lauri Markkanen. And it's something I've certainly touched on HoopsHype. It's certainly something that I'm pretty confident Lauri would be certainly interested in. And for Utah, this is kind of their guy right now. He wants to be there ideally. And, he was kind of the crown jewel of the Donovan Mitchell trade to this point, blossomed into an all-star under Will Hardy, and has been a consistent all-star caliber player under Will Hardy's coaching in that Utah Jazz team. So that's what I'm looking at right now, early, heading into the offseason and just finishing up the combine here.
Yeah, and I mean that Lauri Markkanen contract, it seems like the most likely scenario is likely a renegotiation with Markkanen. I believe they have to wait till August before they can actually do that. So they may, they'll look at some different options before then, and obviously Miles Bridges is one of those, because I mean there is a potential they could sign him and then renegotiate Markkanen, something like that. But the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting is, and you've already kind of touched on a little bit, was the draft picks the Jazz have in this draft. They have 3 draft picks, 2 first rounders, 1 second rounder. And you talked about trading those. Do you see a scenario where they combine those 3 to maybe move up possibly, and instead of having 3 players come in, they get 1? Or is it more something like maybe they trade 3 picks for another veteran player? What do you think?
I think either of those scenarios is certainly plausible. The bottom line is they don't have the roster space to have 3 more kids. They've got enough young guys. They're high on Keontae George. They like Taylor Hendricks. And, I just think for them, one of the things that's going to be interesting, when you talk about trades, what are they going to do with Jordan Clarkson? What are they going to do with Collin Sexton? I think they got to make a decision there. If you're looking at Keontae George as your future piece at point guard there, is there a veteran guy maybe they could go for? Yeah, there are a couple other guards out there I suspect they'll be interested in. And, it's ironic now with all the Donovan Mitchell stuff kind of swirling around Cleveland after he had left Utah a few years ago via trade. And so for Utah, they obviously are high on Walker Kessler, one of their young guys as well. Lauri, I still consider relatively young, kind of entering his prime a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I for them, I will not be shocked if/when I hear Jordan Clarkson and Collin Sexton's name come up in the trade rumors, and potentially John Collins as well, because John has a large salary as well. And if you're going to make a deal for a big time player, you would need that money.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And then I guess you kind of also mentioned it too. Like, let's say they strike out, they go after some trade, it doesn't work out. It takes two to make a trade. So someone out there has to agree. If it doesn't, you kind of mentioned, let's see, Dalton Connect. Is there anyone, is Connect one of those guys you think they're looking at? Is there anyone else you think they might have an eye on?
Well, here's the thing, James. Like, if they're going to use that pick, right, Dalton Connect is probably one of the most ready now prospects. He's 23, he's a little older. You're hastening the learning curve there. And, he could shoot the ball. Is a little bit more explosive of an athlete than I think people give him credit for.
Yeah, that's true.
And you could put him on the wing, kind of improve your size a little bit. He's about 6'6", 6'7". So, that to me was an option there that, and again, there's gonna be a lot of teams interested in Dalton Connect, but I certainly think Utah would be among them if they remain in that spot.
Yeah, he shot the lights out. I mean, in the combine recently, it was pretty impressive. Yeah, and he had like a 42-inch vertical or something. I think he kind of really surprised people. I just want to ask you one other thing, and this was from our team at SLC Dunk. They just gave me a few questions they wanted to ask. Let's say Utah goes completely different direction. They just want to bottom out, go after Cooper Flag. How many teams out there would be interested in someone like Lauri Markkanen if the Jazz wanted to make a trade like that? Is there a group of?
Off the top of my head, I think a lot of people would be interested in Lauri Markkanen. What team specifically?
But do they want to meet the price? Is that something that any team even wants to do?
Danny's the type of guy that likes to squeeze Danny Ainge is the type of executive that will squeeze the pulp out of the orange. We saw that with the Donovan Mitchell trade, and essentially the way he used the Knicks as leverage ultimately, and did the deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's not going to make a move unless he gets what he wants. And the thing is, if you do a renegotiation and an extension with Lauri, and you know what that number is going to be going forward, and you have him under contract, gives him even more of a reason to wait for the deal that he wants. And, I think you've got to look at teams that need to take the next step and get another star kind of guy, and that have draft picks that maybe they would be open to moving. I don't know if this is the case for Lauri, but if I were Danny Ainge and I'm of that thinking, I'm calling Houston, for example. They've got a bunch of picks down the line. If you play out your scenario and they want to, bottom out for next year to try to make a run at Cooper Flag, you move Lauri and you try, you look at Houston maybe. Brooklyn is in need of another star. Would they be interested in parting with some of those Suns picks down the line? Things along those lines. Again, this is just me throwing out hypotheticals if I was in Danny Ainge's shoes, but placating to your if they tank scenario, which they haven't done, truthfully. I mean, they started out the past couple of years decently well, and then towards the trade deadline, they pivoted in a direction that made them not playoff teams, but they certainly didn't bottom out. And it's interesting because the year that Victor Wembanyama came into the draft, a lot of people thought that was going to be the tank year, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think that's where Jazz fans are kind of at. They're kind of like, we either want to be better or we want to bottom out. They're kind of in this like ninth, 10th range in the draft, and they kind of want to just let's pick one route. But
I don't think
anyways,
anybody
Mike,
wants to be in the middle, James. Truthfully,
no, no, that's true.
throughout the league in general, it's almost like the way that the NBA doesn't want to have as much mid-range action anymore. It's the same, when you want either a three or a layup, it's the same thing I feel like with the fan base. Being
It's actually
stuck
great.
in mediocrity is not fun. It's getting to the playoffs, or being a fridge playoff team and then getting smacked in the first round. How much does that really boost revenue and move the needle for fans? Not a ton. At least if you're, bottoming out, you can sell yourself on a future, or if you're contending for a championship and you're going all in, you're a little bit more invested. I will say for the Jazz, when they broke up Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, they kind of hit a wall, it seemed like. And I know the players, when I had spoken to them, they all thought that they could get over that hump, maybe with another move or two, but it just didn't happen. And, the question then becomes, if you're the owner, if you're Ryan, right, and you're looking at this, how long are you willing to continue trying to wait this thing out a little bit until you get really what you want? Because I think this was interesting, James, like the report from Yahoo, Kristen Peak, about them having interest in having Bronny James in for a workout. Bronny James is obviously an NBA prospect, but obviously there was always the buzz about LeBron wanting to play with his son. I almost looked at that and said to myself, well, does the owner Ryan, does he want to maybe start getting into the star market now? And you got Lauri, you already got one guy that's an all-star caliber player. Is he looking to try and supplement that and start making those strides going forward? I think that's something, one way or the other, we're going to find out soon, because you can't keep towing the line here. You either got to go, like you said, and like you said, fans have wanted to go either one way or the other. By the way, last thing I got to tell you, I appreciate Utah Jazz fans. I remember I did an interview with Derek Favors, and Derek Favors is a really nice, NBA role player. But like Utah Jazz fans, that the traffic on that was incredible. So shout out to them. I know they love their Jazz players that stay there a while, and then the fan base is pretty committed to the team. So shout out to them. Seriously.
Yeah, Jazz fans are great, and honestly, a bigger fan base than I think people realize. And I agree. I think it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think honestly, anything's on the table. Danny said in his end of season recap that he's going big game hunting, but if that doesn't work out, because he also mentioned he doesn't want to go from like the 23rd best team to the 18th best team. So I think this offseason, it's going to be really interesting. That's why the Miles Bridges, I mean, it sounds like they are going after him, because they did go get John Collins after we heard rumor after rumor after rumor, and then it happened. And so anyways, I really appreciate you coming on, Michael. This was great. I think this offseason is going to be really interesting for the Jazz. And anyways, thanks again for coming on.
Sure thing. It's going to be transformative for the whole league, I think, personally. There's going to be a lot of trade talk, and you look at Darius Garland, the Donovan Mitchell situation in Cleveland. You look at Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Those are just a few names already. And those are pretty good names already to start with. So I'm certainly looking forward to it. And, my pleasure joining you on the show, James.